Let me take you back to Monte Carlo, where the rich and famous line the harbor with their super yachts, where every corner screams history, and where one split second turned a dream weekend into a mechanical nightmare that's still sending shockwaves through the Williams factory right now. You've probably seen the crash footage by now, the kind of multi-car pileup that makes you wince even if you're not a die-hard Formula One fan. But here's what the broadcast didn't tell you. Here's what got buried under all those replays and post-race interviews. That innocent-looking accident on the streets of Monaco didn't just cost Carlos Sainz a finish. It didn't just rob Williams of precious championship points. Nah, that crash did something far worse. Something that team principal James Vowles is only now admitting publicly. And honestly, it might explain why some teams are secretly terrified every time they roll out of the garage on a street circuit. Now, before I break this down, let me be crystal clear about what we're dealing with here. According to official statements from Williams Racing, Carlos Sainz was running strong. He was inside the points. The car was behaving beautifully, and then Nico Hulkenberg and Franco Colapinto turned Sainz's race into a very expensive game of bumper cars. The result? Immediate retirement, 0 points, and a repair bill that would make even a Saudi prince raise an eyebrow. But here's where it gets interesting. And by interesting, I mean absolutely brutal for the guys back at the factory in Grove. The damage wasn't superficial. This wasn't just a bent wing or a cracked end plate that you can swap out between sessions. According to Vowles himself, speaking in his Team Principal video series, the damage was described as substantial. That's Team Principal speak for "we're in serious trouble." So what does substantial actually mean in Formula One terms? Let me paint you a picture. Each F1 car is essentially a rolling prototype. Every component is custom-made, carbon fiber layered with precision that would make a surgeon jealous, and the spare parts inventory is carefully calculated based on expected wear and tear. Nobody budgets for getting clobbered by 2 cars simultaneously on the narrowest circuit on the calendar. And here's the part that should worry every Williams fan out there. We're talking about a rebuild situation, not just fixing one car, not just putting Sainz back together for the next race. No, this is about restocking an entire spare parts supply that just got obliterated. And Barcelona? That's in a few days. You hear that tension in my voice? That's because the clock is ticking, and the trucks are already rolling towards Spain. Let me take you inside the Williams factory right now. Picture a room full of engineers, mechanics, and composite technicians who haven't slept properly since that crash happened. They're not angry. They're not even frustrated anymore. According to sources familiar with the team's operations, they're just exhausted. Because here's the reality that most fans never consider when they watch a crash compilation on YouTube. Every single carbon fiber component on an F1 car takes hundreds of man-hours to produce. The front wing alone, that's roughly 200 hours of labor. The rear crash structure, another 100. The suspension components that got mangled when those 2 cars plowed into Sainz, weeks of manufacturing time, gone in less than a second. Now, James Vowles, to his credit, isn't hiding from this. In his Vowles Verdict video, he laid it out with the kind of brutal honesty that makes him one of the most respected principals on the grid. He admitted that Sainz didn't put a foot wrong. The driver did everything right. He qualified well, he managed his tires, he stayed out of trouble, and then trouble found him anyway. And that, right there, is the cruel mathematics of Formula One. You can execute perfectly and still walk away with absolutely nothing. But Vowles went further. He talked about the emotional toll. And this is where I want to add something that might sound controversial, but needs to be said. The way he describes dealing with the aftermath, that's not just racing advice, that's life advice. Listen to his words carefully. He says you can carry that emotion for a few hours after the race, but any longer than that means you're looking backward instead of forward. He says to give yourself a minute or 2 of frustration, determine if there's anything you should have done differently, and then move on. Now, I don't know about you, but I've seen plenty of team principals lose their minds after bad results. I've seen blame games, finger-pointing, and public meltdowns that make reality TV look tame. But Vowles, he's treating this like a surgeon treating a patient. Acknowledge the pain, identify the lesson, and get back to work. That's leadership.
That's the kind of calm under pressure that builds championships eventually, even if right now it just feels like putting out fires. But let me ask you something. Do you think the mechanics feel that same zen calm? According to paddock insiders, the mood in the garage has been described as tense, not because anyone's angry at Sainz. Everyone knows it wasn't his fault, but because every single person in that building knows what's coming. Barcelona is a high-speed circuit. It's punishing on cars in ways that Monaco isn't. And if Williams shows up with a depleted spare parts inventory, one more accident, even a minor one, could turn a bad situation into a catastrophic one. That's the hidden cost of that Monaco crash, not the points lost on Sunday, the fear that follows you into the next weekend. Let me fast forward to right now. The Barcelona-Catalunya circuit is looming, and if you know anything about this track, you know it's a car breaker. Long straights, high-speed corners, aggressive curbs that punish every single mistake. According to historical data, Barcelona has one of the highest crash rates
On the calendar, not because the drivers are careless, but because the circuit demands perfection lap after lap after lap. And Williams is heading there with a car that just got rebuilt from the ground up, not replaced, rebuilt. That means components that have been stressed, repaired, or rushed through production. And in Formula One, rushed equals risky. There's simply no way around that. Now, here's what Vowles said that really caught my attention. He mentioned that the damage was caused by 2 cars hitting Sainz. 2, not 1. And that created what he called a double whammy. I want you to think about the physics of that for a moment. The first impact probably broke things. The second impact? That turned broken into obliterated. It's the difference between replacing a cracked wing and replacing the entire rear end of the car, including gearbox components, suspension mounting points, and God knows what else that's hidden beneath all that carbon fiber. The kind of damage that doesn't show up in the TV replay, but haunts the balance sheet for months. And here's my honest opinion, and I want to be careful how I say this because I'm not trying to bash anyone. The regulations in Formula One, particularly the cost cap and the limitations on spare parts production, have made situations like this exponentially worse than they would have been 5 years ago. I'm not saying the cost cap is bad. In many ways, it saved the sport from financial insanity. But it also means teams can't just build 10 of everything anymore. They have to calculate risk. They have to decide how many spare chassis to produce, how many gearboxes to keep in stock. And when a crash like Monaco happens, those calculations get thrown out the window. Williams is now scrambling. And scrambling in F1 is expensive in ways that go beyond money. It's expensive in focus, in manpower, in the mental energy that should be going toward making the car faster, but is instead going toward making the car exist at all. Now, I want to read between the lines of what Vowles said, because I think there's something he's not saying directly. He mentioned that the way to deal with this emotionally is to compartmentalize, determine if there's anything you should have done differently, and move on. But notice what he didn't say. He didn't say the crash was unavoidable. He didn't say there was nothing Williams could have done. He said Sainz didn't put a foot wrong. Those are 2 different things. Could Williams have pitted Sainz earlier? Could they have warned him differently about the cars behind? According to race strategists I've spoken with off the record, maybe. But that's the beauty of hindsight, isn't it? It's always 20/20, and it's always useless because you can't go back and change anything. Let me zoom out for a second, because this Monaco crash isn't just about Monaco. It's not even just about Barcelona. According to team insiders, the real damage here is to Williams' development pipeline. Every single hour that mechanics spend repairing crash damage is an hour they're not spending on upgrades. Every dollar that goes toward emergency spare parts production is a dollar not going toward next month's floor update or next week's front wing revision. And in a midfield battle as tight as the one we're watching this season, those hours and dollars matter. They matter a lot. I want to give you some context that most YouTube videos won't bother with. Williams has been on an upward trajectory. Under Vowles' leadership, the team has gone from backmarker to genuine points contender. Alex Albon has been driving out of his mind. Sainz brought experience and feedback that money can't buy. And the factory has been humming with the kind of positive energy that comes from tangible progress. Then Monaco happened, and according to sources, the mood shifted. Not dramatically, not permanently,
but shifted enough that people noticed. Because here's the cruel truth about racing. You can do everything right for months, and one bad weekend can erase all that momentum. Not the points necessarily, but the feeling, the belief that things are finally turning around. Now, Vowles' approach to this is worth studying. He's not hiding from the reality. He's not pretending everything is fine. He's acknowledging the devastation while simultaneously refusing to let it define the team. That's a tightrope walk that most people couldn't handle. And the fact that he's doing it publicly in a video series that fans actually watch tells you something about his leadership philosophy. He believes in transparency. He believes that if you treat your fans like adults, they'll stick with you through the hard times. And based on what I'm seeing across social media, Williams fans are responding to that. They're not happy about the crash, obviously, but they appreciate the honesty. But let me add a dose of reality here. Honesty doesn't build spare parts. Transparency doesn't repair carbon fiber, and no matter how well Vowles manages the emotional side of this situation, the mechanics still have to do the work. The trucks still have to leave for Barcelona on time. The car still has to pass scrutineering. And if something else breaks during practice or qualifying, that's not a leadership problem anymore. That's a math problem. 2 + 2 = we're out of suspension arms. And that thought, according to people I've talked to in the paddock, is keeping more than a few people awake at night. Let me wrap this up by telling you what I really think is happening here. James Vowles is doing something that almost no other team principal would do. He's using a painful, expensive, emotionally draining situation as a teaching moment. Not just for his team, for himself. Listen again to what he said about compartmentalizing frustration, about looking forward instead of backward, about taking a minute to be angry and then moving on.
That's a guy who's just managing a crisis. That's a guy who's building a culture. And cultures in Formula One are harder to build than cars. They take years. They take setbacks. They take Monaco-style disasters that test every ounce of resilience you have. Now, here's my hot take, and I want to be very clear that this is my opinion, not reporting. I think Williams is going to be fine. Not because this crash doesn't matter. It clearly does. But because the leadership in place right now is the best the team has had in a decade. Vowles comes from Mercedes. He learned from Toto Wolff. He's seen how championship teams handle adversity. And everything he's doing right now, from the public honesty to the calm demeanor to the focus on process over panic, is straight out of the championship playbook. Does that mean Barcelona will be easy? Absolutely not. Does it mean the spare parts situation isn't serious? Of course not. It means the foundation is solid, and solid foundations survive bad weekends. But let me leave you with one final thought, and this is the part that keeps me up at night if I'm a Williams fan. The crash in Monaco was a racing incident. Nobody was being reckless. Nobody made a deliberate mistake. It was just 3 cars in the wrong place at the wrong time on a circuit that punishes proximity. That means there's no one to blame, no procedure to fix, no obvious lesson to apply next time. And that, more than the damage or the points or the spare parts shortage, is the hardest thing to deal with. Because if you can't point to a mistake and say, we won't make that mistake again, then you can't guarantee it won't happen again. And in Barcelona, on a faster circuit with higher speeds and more consequences, that uncertainty is the scariest opponent of all. According to the official Williams Racing statements, the team is focused entirely on Barcelona now. The Monaco postmortem is done. The frustration has been processed, the mechanics are working, the trucks are loading, and Carlos Sainz, according to sources, is already in the simulator preparing for what comes next. That's the beauty of Formula One, isn't it? No matter how bad the weekend was, there's always another race, always another opportunity, always another chance to prove that the crash didn't break you, that the setback was just a setup for a comeback, and that the guy in charge, James Vowles, wasn't just talking when he said the only direction is forward. Barcelona is days away, and if Williams shows up with a rebuilt car, a restocked spares inventory, and that same fighting spirit that got them into the points in the first place, then Monaco will be remembered as a footnote, an expensive, painful, exhausting footnote, but a footnote nonetheless. And in this sport, that's all any disaster ever really is. Until the next one, of course.